insanity runs in my family. Practically gallops.
No stems, no seeds that you don't need. Acapulco Gold is.
Interesting. The most acid I've ever seen anybody eat in my life. Wow, man.
Fire it up, boy.
Why don't you get a job, Spicoli?
What for?
You need money.
All I need are some tasty waves, cool buzz, and I'm fine.
Welcome and thanks for tuning in to Revolution Radio. And now it's time for that feral hippie herself, an infotartic, esoteric, eclectic mix of the adventures of that feral hippie, Miss Mona Radler.
What are you people? On dope?
That was my skull. I'm so wasted.
Make a move and the bunny gets it.
Dave's not here.
All right, Mona, it's all yours. Take it away.
Alrighty, here he is. Is it Monday yet? Oh my gosh. We're at freedomslips.com. Revolution Radio. I would suggest we get into the chat room and that we check. Let's put the donation. Dring! 21 days left, and about $800. Yeah, we need more dollars. Let's make it a beautiful new year that everybody gets something out of it. Go to the homepage. There's the DVDs available for your favorite shows. And there's a lot of shows. There's a lot of stuff that goes through here that no matter even if the hosts are here or not, I bet there's archives for it. So that's only, what, $6 a month now? I'm not really sure. I haven't gotten the information, but I'm going to tell you, send $6 and they'll put the rest in the other kitty. So today I have a interesting genre because I'm into a little bit of everything. Not that I want to do it myself, okay? Please. That's why the world being so versatile is just so much fun. Because there's all kinds of us out there. And if we can just try to use a little bit of peace of love out of everybody and share it right back, you know what? We got a harmonica happening. So today's adventure is with a friend, Ed Roman. Hello.
Hello, my dear.
Dearest, I don't know, man. My transits have been kicking my butt. I don't think there's a deer anywhere close near me.
They're in my field.
You have a blessed haven that you've earned, and I'm glad you can give thanks for it, because a lot of people aren't giving thanks these days.
Geez, that's a powerful statement, and you're totally 100% right. Whether you're into like dogma or religion of any sort and prayer, to me, it's all the same. The power of intent, any of those things that we, like you say, giving thanks. I mean, when I can do what I do from day to day, especially, I don't like the winter, but the summer, growing food and being close to a forest and wildlife. And I mean, it's blessed in so many ways. It's hard not to see it that way for me. And, living in a metropolitan area in the core for a period of time, but I was also raised on farmland. I have that. It's like impregnated in me. I need it. It's part of my DNA. And I think other people, too. That's why, national parks are busy and provincial parks, state parks, all of those things. People need to go and decompress. And when they do, there's that. I know for a lot of people, there's that sense of like when you're coming back to it, you're like, this is so wrong. This is not right. I mean, I've had those weeping experiences in the bush where you're there for 14 days and you're camping, you're hiking, you're portaging, you're going from lake to lake. It's just serenity. And then all of a sudden it's like, I don't want to leave. Even when I was on tour with this African band for a while, we were doing a whole bunch of reservations in Northern Ontario and Quebec and a whole bunch of places out west. And there were times when, like, when you're invited into a teepee and you're sitting on these pine boughs, and there are these people making crafts and cooking things over an open fire, and they're asking you to try things and asking you who you are, and you're having these. You don't want to get on a bus and leave.
Right.
It's like, this is, and you want to get on the bus and play. It's what you want to do, but at the same time, it's like, this is so blessed and wonderful, and I still look at those experiences back in my memory as like a punctuation point of like, wow, I really felt something amazing here, and something that maybe a lot of people don't always get to experience.
Well, it raises your octave because you find that harmony, because we're all getting kicked down by the disharmony of the wrong octaves. And I'm being Native American and get the drift. You found true unconditional being, and that's what we all should be as these tribes. But yeah, it's just one of those moments in life. Cherish it, and you just got some back right now by the memory. So, woohoo!
Well, and in your statement too, originally, when you said, like, you were saying, well, you like so many different things. I think that's the key to like living a good life is trying to understand even what you don't understand. I'm fortunate that when my parents came here from Europe many years ago when they were kids, my dad was only 6 months old or something, but they lived on Scugog Island, and right there was the reservation. So here they came to a different country. They didn't speak the language other than their own. They had to learn to speak English, but also they spoke some Scugog. And that, to me, even from a young age, my dad spent a lot of time in Temagami. He spent time with the Cree Indians. They were friends of ours. So to me, it wasn't anything different than somebody coming that was white Anglo or whatever, however you want to put it. They're all just people. And then you learn something from them every time you talk to them, and hopefully the same thing happens in return.
Yeah, I can just think of all the adventures I had, but I was in St. Pete for 50 years and still had them come to me. I'm thankful that I've had the privilege to have the energies for things to be called to us of those natures as well, because we will receive what we are.
And inside of that, Mona, to that statement, the spirituality of even that indigenous person and their connectiveness with their surroundings on it, not just like, well, this is what we can do with these plants and these herbs, but at the same time, the reverence for the respect of it and not to decimate it in so many ways. When I was at Head Smashed In out at the Blackfoot Indian Reservation out in Alberta, they were telling us, this was a tradition that went on for thousands of years, where they ran the buffalo through this channel off this cliff, and sure enough, there'd be a mass killing, and they would all eat. And within, I think it was 80 to 100 years after the railroad went in, almost the entire buffalo population was destroyed because of hunting and people just, taking pot shots off of trains. And they knew themselves well enough that, you can't do that all the time. And it sustained them for such a long period. Or even just the idea that, well, people have an opinion about Indian people or indigenous people and what they quote unquote say, well, they're this, they're this. Well, no, they're people, and they're also being forced into a situation that they didn't understand. In some cases they did, but at the same time, much was taken from them.
Oh yeah.
And greatly so, more so, what I'm talking about is the spiritual reverence. The thing is that, we're talking about conspiratorial stuff sometimes, big government, hidden government, whatever it is.
Right.
When you're suppressing cultures that are powerful in spirit, when you're decimating them or removing them from a system, it's then harder for people to see what that is again.
People don't get the drift that we're essence of the land.
No, yeah, exactly.
It's give and take, and that everything that we put out there will come back to us, especially on the earth. Just like the gardening, things like that, self-sufficiency, because that's what we're all here supposedly to be able to do.
Well, and that's the other thing, too, is that as time changes, new words and clatures are given to statements.
Clatures? Did you just say clatures?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I couldn't.
No, you're not allowed to be sorry. What does that mean?
Well, it's basically like the kind of texture of the statement, like what it has to do with in this day and age. So it's reference point to a certain word. So here we talk about people being preppers, people that are growing their own food. They're survivalists. Okay, That is what we put on people that grow food, save their own food, store their own food. To me, that is something that my grandparents did.
Right.
Their grandparents did, their parents did, my parents still do today, my mom, my brothers and sisters. There's nothing new about this way of thinking. The only thing that's new is the shape of what we call it. And sometimes those shapes of those words can also then take on a negative connotation. It's just like when somebody says, well, you're a conspiracy theorist. And I always say, well, separate those two words.
But they're making it illegal to exist. At one time, you could collect your rainwater. At one time, you could live in the city and be off the grid. Now, by law, you have to buy their product.
But that's all part of the whole mechanism of big government and it being a British Maritime Admiralty venture. Most governments, especially in the United States and Canada specifically, and I'll speak specifically of Canada because it was a British monarchy. It was controlled by the Queen until we supposedly had our independence and we signed, I think it was 1984, 82, excuse me now for my history, it's a shameful, but the reality of it is that we have still the Queen on our $20 bill. And I'm always questioning is why we have, as a sovereign nation of our own, why we have this sort of thing with the other extent of the British monarchy still existing in our money. But the thing is that, and my statement behind the British Maritime Admiralty law is that the government, when you pay your taxes or anything, you're usually paying them in your municipality or your province or to the federal government, to the corporation of. Those things are corporations. They're actually businesses. And most of the documents that we have in order to exist in those municipalities, provinces, or the federal government are forms of bondage. When we sign a piece of paper and we agree to be that person, we've created a paper version or a non-version of ourselves to agree to do that. And it's known as capitis diminutia maxima. Every one of your federal documents, your driver's license, and even a lot of your water bill, your hydro, they'll always be in capital letters. When you're called to court, it'll always be in capital letters. This province versus, and that will be in capital, and so will your name. And invariably, even when you go to a court, the court itself represents a ship, and you're brought up to the center of the front of the ship at the rail, and the rail represents getting on the ship. You're asked to step past the rail, so you've stepped onto the ship. You then sit in the docket, which is also on a ship as well too, and the captain is really the judge, or the judge is the captain. He's representing that portion of the law, which is maritime. Now, we have civilian law, which is law of the land, but it usually doesn't curtail most of the things that we already sort of sign off on. Now, when you sign
law, I would think would be the religious part, because they're in bed together.
Well, but you know what, that too. But at the same time, the mixing of church and state, which we all know is not a good idea. There's other things too that are like the genealogical aspect of things, where now I'm seeing commercials for things that are like, I can't remember what the name of the product is again, but you can send in a sample of your blood and they tell you everything as to why your eyes are brown or blue, or if you have a propensity to cancer. I think that will start to become something more and more that not only the government starts to look at as far as business is concerned, because, you know, insurance companies are intimately tied with corporations. So when a corporation says, I want an insurance policy, and the insurance company says, well, we need all this information from the people that work for you, otherwise you're not going to get the policy and the kickbacks that come from it. Well, of course they're going to sign into it and tell their people, you have to do this. And that's what becomes dangerous, aside from the other aspect that you're talking about, that it becomes pseudo-religious and things are being decided upon that, when, yes, we may have had a white Anglo government that developed both of these countries, but the reality of it is it's not that anymore. And politics change, people change, the climate of a country changes with the amount of people that come in and out of it. There are probably more Asian Canadians than French-speaking Canadians in the country of Canada. And even when you go to the airport out to Vancouver, there are more signs in Asian and Portuguese and other things like that. So to even call French the second language, and I'm not trying to put up any backs because I am also partially bilingual, because we had to learn it in school. That was part of what. Not many people use the French language unless they have to for their occupation. Transversing products and things like that, moving from Quebec to this province back and forth, and even the rules and regulations between the provinces change because of that. Mm-hmm. So that's all part of it, and I think it's also in this day and age very hard for people to navigate because it's like, man, there's so many things that are always continually changing. It makes it next to impossible to keep up with things, and before you know it, you wake up the next day and a bunch of those things have already been changed.
Well, since we're going to have to try to live up to expectations that are really not of the earth, that's why the separation has begun. And that's been their total cause for these effects to happen. And until we know what our right is here as living beings, not man's laws, universal laws, we're going to keep having these rounds and rounds and rounds of, the discretionary wealth, I guess, is what you got to call it, because...
Well, and I mean, maybe it's an idealistic way of thinking in this perspective, but to me, somehow, a well-cultivated conscience is that universal law. Even if you're not like, devoutly religious towards one denomination or another, or you're on one political side of the fence or the other, when you see a travesty or something that's wrong, innately wrong, and you're sitting there, tight-jawed, shaking your head, wondering why, that should be the clear indicator, that sense of empathy that people have, because I think that's what's going on is the propagation of apathy. Mm-hmm. And here's the prime thing. When I see pictures coming back of soldiers from the U.S. or things that are happening in Saudi Arabia or Afghanistan or anywhere for that matter, the reality of it is that we don't see somebody that is shot open by a machine gun, bleeding all over a road, with kids screaming and crying. That is the horror of war, which most people don't see. We're so caught up in the patriotic aspect of what it is. And trust me, I'm greatly patriotic and appreciative for those people and what they've done. But at the same time, it's not humanistic. It's part of what you're talking about. If you're saying that you follow religiously a Bible and a commandment that says thou shalt not kill, then how can you then pick up an arm against your brother and cut them open with a machine gun? It seems to be so hypocritical and paradoxical to me, based on the political agenda, which so many people are unaware of.
Well, I see the agenda as a bigger thing, to the point of the consciousness of removing the female and overriding with the male. And everything that has been soap opera placated before us in fear has just made apathy, where people can't even be accountable because they don't even know what themselves is here doing.
Oh, of course. And that's it. I think that's the fear mechanism is the big one, because if we all rely on what the box says, then we jump because the fear is pushed. Even here in Canada, and I don't even know where to begin. I'm livid by the whole thing that just happened in Parliament and federal Parliament, with the guy coming in and shoot. And for me, it happened so quick and so fast, and it was dealt with, and there was a funeral, and people were paying homage to the people that died, and all of this stuff. But at the same time, within weeks, there's already talk of change of our civil rights and freedoms as far as the new Anti-Terroristic Act. And people, I hate this statement when people say I've got nothing to hide. It usually sends the hair up on the back of my neck, because it's like, it has nothing to do with that. I understand we live in times where, yes, this may be a reality.
Okay, you just don't like the cop-out, because
I don't, because to me, it scares me when so many few people have so much control, and we're supposed to be living in a free and open society.
You know what?
And the thing is, though, realistically, here's the thing, though, is this, if we do that, even with the 9/11 Commission and what happened with the Homeland Security Act and the all that to me is them winning. And if it's the terrorists that are winning, that's just feeding their source. If it's the other scenario where it's just being played and like the way I feel it's happening, then they're just removing it for their own benefit.
Right. Well, that's like saying marijuana leads to tougher drugs.
Right.
I mean, it's all in the play of the advertising of what people are falling for to believe is fact. And when you said the teeth clenching and the thing like that is, but if they can revert that into where people are angry then, and then they feed into that anger, and we all just have to stop and see really what's illusion and what's fact, and don't carry it.
Well, you're right. And the anger, the feeding of the anger. There was a Martin Luther King documentary on the other night, and I was watching a bunch of stuff that was kind of preliminary stuff that happened really before it kicked off in the whole Million Man March and everything that happened. And this whole nonviolent revolution, even in the sense of what Gandhi was talking about, it's really like, I think even so, a quiet revolution. In a way, or a silent revolution, where if everybody knows this and we start doing what we want as opposed to what they tell us, then it becomes like saying, well, we're going to hand out speeding tickets on a highway where everybody's doing 120 and the speed limit's 80. Like, what are you going to do? Pull one person out of the pile when the system is working? It's even with what you're talking about, marijuana. There's so many different things where people are trying to use tinctures to help their kids. They're trying to, you know, and here the stigmata of it is what promotes the idea, well, that's bad. But let me ask you this. If a kid stops having seizures because they're taking a tincture and the pharmaceuticals that they're taking, the 15 or 20 of them, are actually making them sicker and they're in the hospital all the time, then I ask that person, so if it's working, why are you condemning it? It's the character assassination of what it is that you're more worried about the actual outcome of its effect.
True. Oh my gosh.
And it doesn't make any sense to people when they see it themselves and they go, wait a minute, you telling me people have to like do this illegally, but it's helping their kids? I don't get it. And I say to myself, then there's got to be other things afoot that are promoting. And we know there's big vested money, pharmaceutical companies, and we could go on and on and on, Mona, about what the hell that is.
But that's true. And no, I didn't warn you. At some time or another, getting close, I'd say maybe within the next 5 minutes, there's a 4-minute promo time. And then we come back.
Okay.
But otherwise mute when we do good, so people can hear the promos.
Okay, I will.
And it's funny, I haven't heard the fireplace pop. But here they're trying to outlaw stoves, wood-burning stoves.
Well, and there's a lot of regulations on them. Like even people here, it's a new type of system, and I think people in the U.S. must have them as well. I've seen them driving around through Ohio. It's that system that sits outside of your house. It looks like a little 4x5 kind of cab or a building with a chimney. It then runs a pipe into your house. You can burn the wood, and it runs a filter of heat through the house, and that's the way you kind of got to do it. The two wood burners that we have, it's a Vermont casting stove and another one from Sweden called a Yodel up in our bedroom upstairs that heats up the upstairs. Those two, I think it was like a $75 cert to have them come and go, yes, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, it's cool. and other than that, I mean, they work well and they kick off a lot of heat. Upstairs, I have a little magnetic fan, so when it gets to a certain temperature, it clicks on a little solenoid and it starts to push the fan and it pushes the air out. But there's a lot, even with you're talking about regulations. If I drive 25 kilometers north of my house, I could cut my own wood, plane it, and build something with it. But because where I am within a certain proximity of the greater metropolitan area and regulations that I have to buy wood that's been treated by a factory in order to build something. And even regulations that go with your car. If you have a farm truck or something, you don't have to have your specification in your cert done for exhaust emissions here because you live at a certain distance away from the city. But if you live within a city, you got to have it done. And I understand there's a lot of pollutants and things like that, and the city life is tough to deal with as far as breathing.
Yeah,
and everything
but
is
even
concerned.
that's been a lie. They have had all the technology to make everything the pristine way we could all get along. And the parasites have denied it. And they've told everybody by the fear of laws through government, through religion, through psychological behaviors, You know, that there is no spirit. That's all just wrong. How dare you even assume to like it or think it's there? But they're using it all against us, from the sacrifices, from the other false flags, and calling us who come out with facts of at least some reality behind these conditions that we're the ones causing trouble.
Well, that's it. That's what I mean. Isn't dissonant what's supposed to be a part of society, to have that questioning authority mentality, not to take everything for face value? Because that's been the danger of the past, is just succumbing to whatever is given to you and then going, oh, okay. And then before you know it, it's like, what do you mean we can't vote that way anymore?
All right. I'm going to ask you a question. You've got the idea of what quantum mechanics and physics are? I think you do. I just want to ask.
Absolutely. And that's one of the reasons why, I like your show and other shows that are like this, because we get to talk about those things.
Okay, Patrick English, my guest is Ed Roman, and he can discuss himself real quick. Give yourself a, let my listeners know who you are, or what you believe you want to present yourself as.
I like the feral hippie thing.
Is that a great promo?
I consider myself a musician, gentleman, farmer. And for me, that music comes first, because it has multitudes of different things that deal with spirituality, my connectiveness to everything around my living environment. It has to do with high science to me in terms of frequencies and how it affects the human body and the human condition. When I say the word gentleman, it's because I think people need to be more civil to one another.
There you go.
I think that being having a kind word, extending a hand, an ear to listen to somebody, is the most important thing we can do in this day and age. And farmer, because I'm very passionate and come from a long lineage of farming in my family. I still grow food today. My whole family grows food. It's something that I'm very passionate about, and it goes intimately and hand in hand with the health and well-being of people everywhere.
Mm-hmm. And what was the third one?
That was musician, gentleman, and farmer. That was 3.
Oh, okay. Well, I just thought the gentleman part was a good thing, because and know that words count.
Well, they do, and that's the thing. I think it's the way that there's a thing on Teddy Roosevelt the other night, and he was talking about, Yosemite and the conversations that he had with, I can't remember the name of the famous writer. It's terrible now. And he and Teddy had slipped away and had a few words on a hike and a bit of an adventure that they had. And through those words and those conversations, he persuaded the idea that this should be preserved and it should be kept. And I think that that's it. I mean, when you have a whole bunch of people just selling ego, sex, and violence, there's not a lot of room to obtain language and beauty about something that's directly in your own backyard.
It's actually boring to me.
Well, it is. And I mean, the thing, that's part of the human condition. We all have that animalistic behavior. But to me, the button is like, it's on full tilt.
This is our first separation, sweetie. We'll be back right after it.
I'm on mute.
Thank you. Welcome back. Here we are. freedomslives.com. Revolution Radio. And we are Adventures of a Feral Hippie. And I did have something to say, but it was kind of funny because now I forgot. Oh, was it the DVDs for each of the shows? $30. The host gets half. But we're listener supported, which is really, really cool. Because the whole idea is we have the freedom of making choice to not fall for the idle dollar that is just used in a parasitical manner to deny us the facts and truth of our inner beings. Woo! I mean, come on, people. Keep helping out, and I thank those who have. All right, Mr. Ed, I would like to know, if I'm out there looking for something that you have produced in music, what would the titles be?
Well, the latest record is called Letters from High Latitudes.
Cool.
And the stories in the songs are like a perspective from somebody, once again, like the feral hippie, that's kind of outside of the normal circle of things and kind of looking in at the race happening. They can see the crash coming from the car a mile away, and They know what concessions people are going to buy because they can see it happening
Oh,
from a distance.
Those were memories that just popped into my head when you said that, because it's been that way.
Well, I know, and even the first track of the album is called "I Told You So," and it's saying, you know, the lyrics go, well, who builds the myths inside our shopping carts and all the hearts of everyone we see? Buy up the bygones and illuminate morons. You've seen it on TV. And then it summates it by saying, I hate to say it, but I told you so. That, you know, this isn't something, Mona, and the kind of person you are and many other people that are on Revolution Radio and people around the world that are talking about this kind of stuff, like from convention. The reality of it is it's been going on and building for a long period of time. Just even the way, and once again, going back to the way people consume food. You know, it wasn't that long ago that people everywhere had victory guards. And it was something
one of those ones who taught that.
Yeah, well, and I was taught to me and all my brothers and sisters and to my parents by my grandparents because it was something that we did. And because of it, you feel that connection to your surroundings. You're out there, you're, you know, especially if you're organically gardening things. I'm not talking about the Miracle Grow garden, you know, but the reality is that not only the sense of self-pride that you feel from it and consuming good quality food from right outside your door, there was also this competitiveness that existed between people. Like, I mean, where I grew up in a rural area, the county fair every fall would host, you know, people jam making, the biggest tomato, the biggest pumpkins, the biggest cucumbers. The kids in 4-H would be there showing their calves. There was all of that all happening in a community where everything that was in that community, I guarantee you, was at a local grocer. Everything came from around that area. And you were talking before in the previous bit of the show about rules and regulations and the reality of it. Well, like even with free trade agreements, it makes it very difficult on a financial level for a business that's trying to make, you know, X amount of money for their shareholders and profit margin every year to say, well, hey, with this free trade agreement, I can go further to buy those tomatoes or whatever it is for their product when it's actually growing in their own backyard, but it's $15 a bushel as opposed to $12 a bushel or $10 a bushel.
Oh, I lost a 35-year herbal business because of that.
And see, that's what I'm getting at. Even something as simple as rosemary, I'm thinking, I look at it in the store and it's coming from thousands of miles away. And then in turn, you look at the amount of people like where I am in Ontario, that down towards the Niagara region where they grow a lot of grapes and fruits and vegetables. They're selling greenhouses because they're not making a profit anymore. The big corporate stores, and that's the thing. When you sell also the idea to the consumer that don't worry, we got your back. We are your guiding star. We are the person. We will label these packages so you know exactly what you're getting when you get it. I mean, it's almost like a weird Weight Watchers program of people consuming just because of what the store says.
All right, let me throw a condition out there for you. How are your skies? Are your skies full of interesting phenomena of different clouds and things like that?
Yes, they are, and they're doing a good job on days, especially when people are already in at work between 9 and 12. And then again, they're doing it again between 1 and 5 when everybody's in work. And just, it seems to be like people don't seem to notice it. It's so blatantly obvious, the spraying that's going on. And not only that, it's like, well, you know, you have these arguments with people. Well, that's just trailing from normal jets. Well, no, it's not, because some of the photographs and the things that I've seen from people that have either followed these aircraft or insider photography of other aircraft that have been outfitted with you. See, that's the thing. When you see this...
well, that just brought up 9/11, because people are falling to say that if they saw it on TV, it must be real. I've done photography from the very beginning. Remember when they had actual film?
Yeah.
Get the drift of the phonics of the behaviors of the things that are going on. Plus, I was an airbrush artist for photographs, you know, like they do for the pinup dolls and all that.
Okay. But that's the thing. You see a digital photograph today, you zoom in on it in the pixelation and it's gone. You have 16 mil, 18 mil, whatever film you're using, you don't have that issue. And I find it quite ironic that you can't even buy film hardly anymore. I mean, Kodak here, even in Toronto, we had a huge plant, a street named after that. They're gone.
Well, because you could see the slower phonics. You know how many orbs and ghosts and other things of those natures I got off of that type of camera?
Hey, a lot of times people are using the...
Honey, I mean, that's how much I loved photography.
Right, I know, and but see, that's the thing. It's like capturing the moment is essential, especially when you're trying to explain a phenomenon that you can't. So, but yeah, I've taken a lot of photographs of things in the sky and things that have been going on, especially in the daytime. And the other thing is that once you start doing that and paying attention to it, you also start to see the repetitious behavior of certain things. One of the things that I've noticed is this sort of preemptive hatch marking that goes on prior to the spraying. So, for instance, there'll be a smaller plane that comes in just at the slower or lower altitude than those planes will be flying at, and they'll drop a quick line. And they'll do a multitude of those things from usually north to south, almost like this is where the grid needs to be. Invariably, within a half an hour to an hour after that, you'll see the east-westers at about 30,000 feet that are flying the complete hemisphere and then creating the lattice work that goes across the skyline. Now, people that I've talked to or showed this to, they either poo-poo the idea that it's ridiculous that a government would do that to their own people. And then the other thing that's like, do your history. And then the reality of it is that like the other people that say, well, I think there's something happening because there's this talk of this geoengineering program and sun molecules and the military releasing flak and chaff. And then that they say that's contributed to this whole idea that the sun is increasing in temperature. And it's going to me, it seems like there's so much convoluted information that you can't help go, wait a minute, there's something wrong with this whole picture. And not even just to what's going on at an atmospheric level. If that stuff and the stuff that they say they're spraying, from cadmium to arsenic to barium, and in some cases blood plasma, and then what's Morgellons? Where did that come from? The reality of it.
Mexico with syphilis.
They've sprayed other foreign countries with different kinds of disease programs. Right. So it's like, why? In the chemical composition of certain things in certain soils is also changing. So for instance, if we had a great year of tomatoes, the following year, if there's a heavy thing of spraying, we might end up with strange occurrences that are going on with the leaves, like the leaves themselves are trying to protect themselves in an abnormal way. And it's not because of sunlight. It's because, and there was a lady I was listening to that has an organic farm in Hawaii, and she went as far as to actually build a fairly large greenhouse that was protected over the same property that she was openly growing on. And she found that 1/4 or 1/3 of that area space where she had everything protected, it wasn't just because of the change in the bioatmosphere, it was more humid, the soil. It's actually that the vegetables grew 30 to 40% stronger because it wasn't exposed to all that junk. And I mean, I can go out in the afternoon after they've been doing it to my windowsill, take my finger, run it along the windowsill, and see that stuff on my fingers. So I know it's there. I know it's coming down, and I can even collect it in glasses of water. If I leave a tray of water out on my picnic table, leave it for the afternoon. It's not just leaves and dust and stuff like that, because you can systematically put out a series of them over the course of 12 hours, and then go back and look at the water content of each of one of those little things that you put out, and you'll realize that over the course of the day, that first one that you put out is obviously collecting more. But if you go through it, you'll start to realize that the particles are similar by the time that you get to the end of it. I've never had it tested, but it seems to be like, man, the sky, we went from a completely blue sky to stratus clouds in less than an hour and a half. How is that possible?
Well, they're even having new and improved versions of happening. That's where another thing is that we can't have fear of it. And we recognize that our spirit, our inner dwelling, how we take this reality check, is what's going to bring on to us for any kind of illnesses, any kind of other disasters, etc. Because it was always in the circle of the peace of the inipi, the home, and home is within us.
Well, and you're right, and that's the thing. If people hear that information or even see it, they tend to, like you say, through the fear of it, not even want to look at it because it is so, I can't believe it, information.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, I don't want to like say that you have to make that horror. You know, maybe I'm going into Kurtzian kind of moments here from Apocalypse Now, but you know, or even Krishnamurti, that whole thing where he's like, would you rather not know that the lion or the tiger is lying in wait at the jungle line? Can you not prepare yourself differently? And even so, knowing that that fear is there can then steer your own emotional level away from it so that you can properly deal with the path ahead. And that and that's the thing. It's just like, well, do you buy into it?
I would love it, right? To me,
Or-
it'd be an adventure to sit down and have that occur, just under the peace of being whatever happened.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And to me, that'd be fun.
Hey, I get a lot more off of going into a bush than I do from, you know, getting on a roller coaster. I mean, they're both fun, but to me, the placidity of stuff also shows me a lot about other things. It stops the merry-go-round and the Ferris wheel for a moment.
But it's welcoming a part of you that is of the truth law, the true universal law of why we are here being. Nobody's been able to learn their true strengths of the unconditional love that is so powerful. It can move mountains, literally.
Well, and all the great archetypes and spiritualists of today and yesteryear are all saying the same things. The problem is that when you're caught up in the mechanism of the day-to-day, it's next to impossible for people to separate. No, I've got the kids and work, and then we have to make dinner.
Well,
and then
I'm going to take that back for you, because if our future is what we believe now, then we believe that everybody's going to get a break and learn to start playing life again instead of dying to a man-made illusionary existence. We have that inner choice. If I don't have the fun of feeling like this is like a go, then everything's going to be a stop, and then things will hang up and we'll drown in it. That doesn't make sense to me, Ed.
It doesn't make sense to me either. And that's even the programming aspect of it. I mean, people say I'm watching a television program. That also creates that kind of an individual that is perfect and ripe for the system. People that don't question authority or why things are wrong are perfect examples of the people that are even running the countries right now. You know, I mean, and that's the thing. People are afraid of themselves. They're afraid of, in some ways, you know, taking that chance or stepping out or accepting something that may be out of their normal realm of thinking, and looking further into it, because the information, like, you know, that some of the people that I've loved to listen to talk to, invariably will say, don't listen to me. Don't listen to me. I can hand you paperwork. I could show you books. I could talk for hours and hours. You go and source it out yourself, because you'll start to see it's like a jigsaw puzzle.
Exactly.
Once you start to put the picture together, you start to realize, okay, this thing's always been here. There's no way to get away from it, but the only way to do it is to live my life as best as I can, away from all this BS. Because it doesn't make any sense. Even like with stuff we know with the medical industry, it's like, okay, it takes somebody with a natural form of medication years to get that product out into the market, into a simple place like a health food store. Meanwhile, a pharmaceutical company, without trials and studies, they can have things out that are like, have 30 side effects to stuff that'll make you twice as worse as what you've actually taken the medication
that's
for.
Obamacare. Here, honey, are you kidding? We're all getting taken care of, don't you?
But see, you know, and the other thing is too, is that the puppet pointing, and I'm going to call it that, PP, puppet pointing, is that it's irrelevant. All those people are just puppets for what's really kind of going on behind the scenes. Yeah. And in Obama's case, and I love to have conversational arguments with people about this, because we all have these moments where I hate this president. I'm talking about American politics. I love this president. I hate this president. I love this president. The most of the time, and if you listen to some of the presidents in the past that have either written something about it where it's like, my hands are tied and I'm telling the public this and there's nothing I can do, or in some cases have ended up with a bullet in their head. The reality of it is that there are other people behind the scenes, and have been for a long time. Listen to Roosevelt talk about it. Listen to Truman talk. There's a whole bunch of people that have alluded to this. And these are people that they have been elected by the populace, are telling the populace. Even Ike said before he left office, he said, beware of the military-industrial complex. That he was, and so people say Obama. Look, there's people in the federal government that were groomed by Merrill Lynch. There's Kissinger's in there who's Rockefeller. It's a little old club of people that are kind of controlling things. And despite we want them to have the best intentions, the only way that that's ever going to happen is by electing somebody that people believe in, and then that person has to take the steps to protect themselves and have the right people.
Work over again. We're at the precipice where things had to literally dead stop, and people are going to find their asses from a hole in the ground or not.
Right.
Because that's what they have planned for this to come up, because there's a bigger picture here, bigger.
Or at the same time, then with people knowing that and the technology and the abilities that we have today as people to make information go from person to person in a huge space, it should be less of a conundrum and far easier for people to organize themselves and say, hey, look, we can run a parallel election to the federal election that's going on. And
I just can't see that. I don't want to go down this road right now, Ed. I want to go to where they've hidden all this information in the Smithsonian and other places that have all been dialogically programmed to us through, like you said, the media.
Well, yeah.
Paid for it through our taxes and our blood.
Right. But that's the thing. Unless that aspect of it changes, unless that part of it, we either remove ourselves and refuse to participate in it, or change it ourselves on a peaceful level, that's the only way it can happen. Look, if just hypothetically, if 95% of the people heard about a secondary election that was occurring, and they had the option to do it even on a hypothetical level, on a hypothetical level, let's just see what happens. And the outcome was this. And the federal government said, well, that doesn't count. But 95% of the populace believes this. It's even with people's decisions about stuff that are going on in federal politics. If 95% of a public board is saying we don't want this, but the federal public servant is refusing to participate in their conversations and not paying any attention to them, then I ask you, who is then running the show? Then the public gets what it deserves. The public gets what it deserves by not paying more attention to the people that are on the podium every 4 years shoveling this stuff. Because if you know, it's like this. The worst thing that I can hear from a politician's mouth is when they start promising people things. That is a clear sign to me to run in the other direction, because nobody has the way in this day and age to fix everything within a 4 to 8 year term. It's not going to happen. It's got to be something that is slowly developed over a period of time. If somebody comes out and says, look, I want to know this, I want to figure, I'm not going to promise you anything, but I'm going to try to do the best job that I can when things are happening. That's the key. They're the representative of the public.
It just still all boils down to what we were hearing from you before about the admiral law, the boat law, you know what I mean, maritime law or whatever.
Right, maritime admiralty law.
They're all getting a cut of everything and making our behavior, which is natural, illegal.
Of course, it'll be illegal. You have to pay a fee to breathe.
Breath areatism when we return. We'll be right back. It's a beautiful day in the neighborhood. And everybody should be in chat, man. We got 33 people in there putting out their opinions, their ideas, and we have one heck conversation every now and then. Welcome back. It is 1:02 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. January 12th, 2015. Oh, gosh. I do ephemeris work. I love astrology. I've always loved it. It was like a book was handed to me and my DNA turned on. So I do get the drift that there are so many external influences that people just don't even have a clue about. And when we do, it's still something that we have to investigate. So we don't have to have it as an unequal thing around us, in us, by us, do us, because everything comes back to us, right? Uh-oh. Oh, that was cool, maybe. Ed, are you with me?
I'm here, girl.
Okay, that was my best I could do.
No, astrology is, one of those things that either people don't agree with, or they do agree with, or they're sort of, it's a bit. But see, the thing is, to me, is like a lady that I knew many years ago, and I don't even know if she's still on the planet, but I know she's here in the ether. Patricia Krillick, who was I'm going to say she's a psychic medium and a sensitive, but, was also very close to our family, did astrological charts for many of us, refused to do some for some of us. Mm-hmm. And now looking back 30 years later, the turmoil and things that they'd been going through, there maybe was a reason why it didn't happen. But she once told me something very potent when she did my chart. And she said, look, none of this is set in stone. What I see is the potential of a cultivated or an uncultivated personality. That's what her astrology was. If there were things in your chart that showed itself as to having the astrological mathematical potential, and I use that word potential,
exactly,
because without the recognition of what it could be. Now, whether to people say, well, that's just placebic or, self-imposed, pre-manifest destiny, the reality of it is that it's designed in order to help and to help steer that person in some way, or to make them realize things about themselves that are there and are not there to them. And even in some cases with the spiritual world on that level, on astrology level, when you go to a medium that says things to you on, first of all, like that, but then at the same time has things that are not directly related. She's not going to say, I know you have a dog at home that is black. But what she will say is that you may have a great love for animals, or whatever it might be that makes me reattune to. That's why I have this thinking about things. Mm-hmm. And because of that, it strengthens that potential again in that person to realize that stuff about themselves.
Well, it saved my children's lives.
Saved mine too. When my dad died and I went to have my chart done, it gave me a lot of insight as to things that were right and wrong in my life that I needed to look at.
But we all have characteristics that are part of us that are out of our control. They are a subconscious, sublineal kind of being, and that's part of the spirit and the soul in my agenda.
Yeah.
The whole condition is if I would not have known that those energies occur outside themselves, like you said, and better directed to the best of my ability, and I had a lot to learn, how that happens. And what I found out is a lot of adults are those kinds of children. And if we look at the map that could be there, how do we know where our journey could be going or not? Because
go ahead.
Yeah,
you're right, Mona, because it's to me an astrologer is more of like a spiritual guider or teacher. Because if you go to a teacher for lessons, they know that you have a certain potential when they see you and talk to you. There's something obvious there. But at the same time, as a guider, you're trying to help them see their potential, not just what you think their potential is. So in essence, I see it almost being like symmetrical, and just by utilizing the knowledge of that in your birth chart. And see, there's a lot going on there that's hard for me to say, well, it's just, hocus pocus.
No, well, because RCA used it, it's just like the first piece of quartz. This planet has vibrations that are beneficial to our energy of all sorts.
Oh, absolutely. And
they wouldn't know how to flip and supposedly ship off a rocket, right?
No, and that's the thing. If you look at companies, they have people that work for them that they call market analysts. Well, market analysts are really sort of like sociological trend watchers, which in some ways is the movements of people and the way that they move and what they do. They are almost like doing the same thing in that regard. And in some cases, if you talk to somebody at a company, they'll laugh about it and joke and go, "Well, yeah, that's our astrologer." They sort of tell us kind of what's going on and how we should maybe do what we're going to. Isn't it the same thing? It's basically on a different level, what you're talking about, which is far more noble and moralistically sort of soothing, is that, okay, well, I am this. I have this potential. So why not try to work towards it? It's like when somebody gives you an opportunity and you go, wow, I can't believe it. You're going to try to figure out what it's all about. Because you're excited about it. It's the same. It's the same thing to me. And if you already are in a state of like, well, I'm not going to believe that, you pretty much have no hope. It's like somebody that's addicted to something, and then they go, yeah, well, no. Until you want to change what those things are, that's not going to change.
Yeah, it is a conscious state of awareness, and then how we have been socialized to believe certain things in ways that aren't accountable except to make things harsher. And we're here to have a blessed life. I mean, even though I know all the crap's hitting the fan and many fans are blowing and other things of those natures, I know that by my feeling my harmony of blessed thanks for what is around me, it'll vibrate out there. That's why I asked you about the other stuff, because that's what I think music is. I listen to the songs of what we listened to growing up, and I hear sadness and bullshit, and I don't want to sing them anymore, even though I know them. We have been programmed through so many ways and means. I want to subliminalize in the masses by music to get that out of their psyches. But that's
you're right, Mona, and that's the thing about the mainstream industry today with a lot of, like you say, the ego-driven music, is that, yes, we're fortunate, and so are other people still, because you still have the ability to go listen to it, to be around those kinds of messages. And those messages are the mantras of the generations. They are the things that swoon people into the idea that we have this potential and this is what's kind of going on. Why then would a corporation who wants to keep people stupid buying makeup and jewelry and the cars that all the stars do, why would they want it any other way when a whole bunch of people would be empowered to think differently and not participate? You know what? It's wild to do this. If you go look at, say, a concert from 1970s, okay, even the early 80s, online, YouTube or whatever, and you look at the audience, doesn't matter who the band is or the artist is, pick your favorite. When they go to those shots, it's not the hair and just the time frame, but look at the clothing. You'll notice that almost nobody is wearing an emblem for some major corporation or a company in some form of stature symbol that's on their chest, hat, shirt, jacket, whatever it is. Nowadays, you do that, you pan out to the audience, and you could see it everywhere. There's a corporate logo practically in a paganistic, symbolistic way on everybody's person. And we even as people are taught to seek it out. Oh, it's G&G, it's such and such, it's da-da-da-da-da. All of those things really at the end of the day have no validity in our growth as human beings, the way we connect to one another. And really, I don't give a flying, what about what kind of a car or purse or hat or jacket or suit, anything anybody has. What do you have to say? What are you doing with your life, and how are you relating to people? That seems to be more potent to me as a human being than just the crap that people have. I know a lot of people that have money, and they are sad people. Or when somebody comes up to me and I'm, hanging out in the ocean somewhere and they swim, and I think, hey, this could be a cool conversation. And the first thing they ask me is, hey, you making over $100,000 a year? You making over $100,000? Yeah. And I'm like, what kind of a question is this to start off a conversation?
Oh, that's like somebody introducing themselves to me and saying, I'm a Christian. Do you know Jesus? I'm like, oh, Jesus.
But that's okay. So let them be Christian. let them be wealthy and whatever they think it is. But see, that's the thing. It dominates the ego to the point of reasonability. When you can't reason anymore, because that is basically creating what I call also forced character assassination.
Right.
When I was playing at a church down in, speaking of church, in churches and religion, I was asked to be, and my wife, the godparents to a Jamaican child, and we readily accepted. We're good friends with these people. They become our friends. When we were at the church, they asked me to play a song for the ceremony, for the baptism. So I'm thinking to myself, what do I play in Jamaica in a church that's 108 degrees, wearing a suit with an acoustic guitar that would work? And I'm thinking, well, spiritual song, I could play something that's like, peace is flowing like a river, or make me a channel of your peace, or something like that people would sing in a church scenario. But I thought, you know what? I want to sing a Bob Marley number because I'm in Jamaica. I've met parts of Bob Marley's family. I've met Bunny Wailer, all these people that, to me, Bob's music is extremely spiritual and in many ways properly rebellious. I thought, I'm going to play this tune called Small Axe, okay? And if the Marley fans are out there, they'll know. Lyric goes, why boast to thyself, O evil man, playing smart but not being clever? You're working iniquity to achieve vanity. I sow, but the goodness of Jah endures forever. Okay, so in that statement, you're working, playing smart but not being clever. Here I am playing the tune in the church, and all of a sudden I hear this, stop him now. And it's the mother of the child's mother who's complaining that I'm not playing a spiritual tune in the church. Now, it goes dead quiet in the church. I turn and look at the congregation of 130 people. They're all staring at me. I look in the corner. I see the band that's playing there. They're all staring at me. I look up at the minister and two other people that are performing the ceremony. They're staring at me. And my wife comes up, taps me on the shoulder, and whispers in my ear. She says, much respect, man, but you got to play something else. And I'm looking there horrified. So I break into one of my tunes that's called The World Keeps on Turning, which has a spiritual message in itself. And I was so flustered by the moment that by the time I got to the second chorus, I just put the guitar down on the altar and walked away. And what seemed like an eternity was 10 minutes or less left of the ceremony. Well, lo and behold, after the ceremony and the congregation is flooding out of the church onto the steps, the minister, tons of people from the congregation, they all came to apologize to me. Because she was the only one that didn't want that to happen. Because it wasn't of that thing. It didn't have that wording in it that she felt was appropriate for the church. Meanwhile, the entire congregation completely felt it acceptable, and even felt so much so.
Yeah, but she asked you to play this song.
Right, but the premise of it is playing smart but not being clever. Here I am delivering a spiritual message still, but at the same time, the dogma in her own mind is overriding her own reason to see that what I'm doing is paying complete respect to the situation.
Right.
And that's what I'm getting at. That even it exemplified it almost ironically in the lyric when it was happening. And I'm thinking to myself, this is so wrong when situations begin this way. And I understand people's passion behind what they're doing, but at the same time, it's like when it completely destroys the situation because of that, where is that situation supposed to find its fruitfulness and blossom if it's colored by that already? It's next to impossible.
It's all in the hum, Ed. Okay, that's all I got to tell you. I believe it's all in the hum. You can excuse yourself out of so many situations just with a and walking away. I mean, it's in the hum. Seriously.
I start playing songs.
You tried to stop hearing what your parents or somebody was at you about. You put your fingers in your ears and you'd hum.
Yeah.
Do that.
I just pick up my guitar and start singing tunes to people. That seems to be the best.
Well, but that was the time you couldn't tune anymore, man, because you were overrun.
Well, yeah, I was in that regard, but at the same time, it's like the after effect of it in realizing later that it wasn't that, because it's so it was like something from a film, you know, and you're left on. And somebody once asked me in an interview, what was the hardest thing that ever happened at a gig that went wrong? It wasn't like my amp fell off of a thing, or I tripped, or the lighting went and bust, and the pump house or thing flooded in electricity. It wasn't anything. It was that moment. Just being put in that position and realizing it's like everything is stopping. All I could hear was the fans running, you know, in the building, because it was so hot. If there was crickets, I'm sure they would have been, they would have been going as well. But that's what I did. I just started playing another song and tried to shake it off. But the realization after the fact that nobody felt that way except her amplified for me that it's just that one thought and that one person and the action behind it that can really color the situation in a negative way.
Well, and it helped you put your armor on a little tighter, didn't it?
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, put you on your toes.
Well, well, that brought up an idea that I had this woman, because I did markets and selling my wares, my herbs and stuff, and this woman would come by and we'd chat every Saturday. But one Saturday she said something. I said, "Yeah, that's a Sagittarius for you." And she's like, her jaw dropped, and she basically said, "You do the demonic. You're part of Satan." And I'm like, I got one of those floors, just like you felt. And I'm like going, whoa. And then the next couple minutes, I'm coming down trying to go. Some woman's pushing her walker, going, "God bless you. God bless you." And I'm like going, if the universe just doesn't play it with us, we just have to be there to see it, to know that it's all one big cosmic ha-ha.
Well, yeah, I just finished writing a lyric that said the baby cried as the Bible spoke, and the grinning dog said it's just a joke. And I, as much as I was raised in a Catholic environment,
I'm a dog in Chinese.
Me too. I'm a wooden dog. That you know, I was an altar boy. I went to church every Sunday. I was friends with not only the pastor at our church, but the bishop from our diocese, 2 different dioceses in the city of Toronto. My uncle was
give him credit for the architecture, don't you?
Yeah, well, my
ways were just something else.
Yeah, well, I mean, and that's the thing. Like, even my uncle, okay, so here he's friends with Pope John Paul II. And prior to him ever being the Pope, he was a priest. They were friends. My uncle was always for the idea that if people wanted to practice religion, they should have the rights and freedoms to do it. Because we came from a time where we had to leave Europe, much of us, many of us. And had my grandparents not left, none of us would be here. And about 70% of my family were killed by either the Russians or the Germans, or anything that happened post-World War I into the Second World War and the takeover of Slovakia, which became Czechoslovakia. So because of their religious rights that they felt they should have, many of them were killed. And some of them even practiced just being able to go to church every Sunday by hiding in basements where a priest would come to the house in plain clothes and you know, perform the ceremony so people could have communion or go to confession or any of those things. Well, my uncle recognized what that was, and despite I'm not actually a practicing Christian or Catholic, I should say, the reality of it is that he believed that for everybody, whether they were Hindu, Muslim, Jewish, Christian, Orthodox, Byzantine, Greek, Catholic. It didn't matter what it was. That people, the ultimate thing inside of it is love and compassion and understanding. If you don't have those 3 basic things, how then can you sit and condemnate somebody for somebody when those are the 3 main things that 90% of all religions of the world are trying to say?
Well, while in somebody else's shoes as well, because people just don't get the drift if they're only in themselves realizing.
Well, yeah, and that's it, or inside of the language alone.
Yeah, right.
You know, I mean, like, you know, that's it. Once again, we come back to what those words mean for people and their potency. And if it becomes if it overrides reason to the point where you can't, as the words say, respect your brother, respect your neighbor, love your brother. All of those things are canceled. They're null and void if it's clouded by something else in the language. Even today, when people are talking about the Islam issue and ISIS and all this stuff, it's the perturbingness of. I know people that are Muslims. I know people that we pray 5 times. They're beautiful, wonderful people that care about everything around them. And once again, it's the media, the hype behind it all, and buying into the fear of what that is.
Well, that's true, but when in the last house I spent like 3 years at, there's a lot of transients that came through that living existence. And tell you what, there are the shrills, the trolls, and I almost said gnolls. I think there's a third word for the, ones who are playing to that favor of the wrong side. I even know they were part of the Boston bombing bull crap because the conditions all warranted the evidence of what happened. And when I touched the furniture when they left, oh my gosh, I don't even want to tell you what came in press conference.
And I know, and that's the thing, is all those things will dictate what those are unless they're studied, recognized, and paid attention to. It just came up now, and it sort of ties into what we were talking before. But even without the world government, secret world government, Illuminati, Bilderberger concept, even those kinds of things that you're talking about, where people will buy into, let's call it the dark side of the force, that's all part of the dogmatic training. And not only that, at the same time, the oppression. Look, to me, if an armed military force all of a sudden came into this country, and I was left with having to fight for my freedom and my rights to be able to exist and not be rounded up into it, I would do anything in my possibility to do it. How can you deny those people in those situations, innocent people that have nothing to do with any of those things, are caught in the crossfire? Millions and millions and millions of people
who's backing all this as well. And I don't want other countries to feel that I'm accepting this, because I don't accept any of this.
Of course, and that's what most people don't realize, is that when you do talk to people in other countries, whether it's Singapore, the United States, Canada, Germany, it doesn't matter where it is, everybody is of the same ilk and the same opinion in many ways when it comes to, that's not me. I have no control over this. It's beyond my, and they don't understand it themselves. Hey, big exclamation point, red light on, something's not right. And
you have to look a little bigger picture here, because all I can think of right now, pardon me, is the UN.
Well, hey, look, you know what, David? Look, that whole thing is the failed League of Nations. Most people, if you forget your grade 9 history, is, the UN was born out of that. Once again, it's the changing of a name on the old idea, and nobody wanted the League of Nations post-World War I. Then, through the funding, through the Rockefeller family, they built the United Nations building, they donated the land. All of that was set up. Not only that, the Trilateral Commission, Council on Foreign Relations, working with Zbigniew Brzezinski in order to make those things happen. They tied into OPEC, they tied into foreign policies in countries everywhere around the world under the auspices of the idea that this was for the benefit of people, just like the League of Nations, and the world would be able to police certain things. Well, in less than 50 to 60 years, what's gone on is the sovereignty of most countries and the rules and regulations are now either kiboshed, or trade agreements can't be even dealt with anymore because of the rules and regulations of the United Nations based on what they see happening in other countries. When most of the time, those things are instigated by our own countries.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like people don't see, well, wait a minute, if we're selling military and armaments to all those people 25 years ago and now they're arming themselves against, what do you expect?
I expect a new edition of Popular Mechanics.
You create Frankenstein monsters.
They're going to be having come soon.
I need to read this Nesta Webster quote, because I think it sort of serves what we're talking about. And it's from one of her books, and the quote goes like this. And I used the word Illuminati before because it's even in the language of this. But it's, to me, the art of illumination, is also something that it's like the recognition that this is a reality and they're playing that game. So here's the quote. The art of illuminism lay in enlisting dupes as well as adepts. people that were easily duped or adaptable, right? And by encouraging dreams of honest visionaries or the schemes of fanatics, by flattering the vanity of ambitious egotists, by working on unbalanced brains, or by playing such passions as greed and power to make men and women of totally divergent aims serve the purpose of the sect. People with money are welcome, but are to be kept oblivious to the actual secret. The purpose is to win power and all riches and to undermine the secular religions and governments of the world and become masters of the world. So to me, if you turn on your television today and you skip through 50 stations or pick up a magazine or a newspaper and you look at some of the subject matter and the type of people that are illuminated in our society today and the kinds of messages that they're sending are totally part of the program.
Mm-hmm. It's a sales job. It's just one big advertising situation. All right. We've got breath now, so we shall return. Thank you, Ed.
Yeah, man.
We're an anarcho-syndicalist commune. We take it in turns to act as a sort of executive officer for the week. Yes. But all the decisions of that officer have to be ratified at a special bi-weekly meeting. Yes, I see. By a simple majority in the case of purely internal affairs. Be quiet. But by a 2/3 majority in the case of more... Be quiet. I order you to be quiet. Look, you stupid bastard, you've got no arms left. Yes, I have. Look! It's just a flesh wound.
I don't believe I've seen such a display of courage, skill, nerve, grace, and stupidity.
I'll do you for that. Oh, what? Come here. What are you going to do, bleed on me? I'm invincible. You're a loony. The Black Knight always triumphs.
Roundtable Live Monday through Friday, 1 a.m. till 4 a.m. Eastern Time. Bring your mind, bring your ideas, bring your voice. King Arthur had nothing on us here at Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com.
I gotta know the truth, Charlie.
This is Stu Webb, Federal Whistleblower, the new host of Veterans Today Radio News Reports, Monday right here on Revolution Radio. My guests are writers and contributors to veteranstoday.com, the #1 alternative media magazine in the world and the true voice of the world's clandestine community. We will be discussing recent articles that deal with government corruption, politics, military, Illuminati, and world events that affect your lives and what you can do to change the direction of America. So tune in to the Veterans Today Radio News Reports every Monday evening from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on Studio B here on Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com. Thank you.
Coverage? Oh, you mean them little root weevils that crawl around popping up cameras in your face?
Those root weevils write history.
5,000 seeds. 25 years in the freezer. Long-term storable, 54 different varieties. So if food prices go crazy, the shit hits the fan, or if you just want to save tons of money every year by creating your own food like I do, grab our seed pack special. Just look for the banner on the homepage at freedomslips.com. Don't be a statistic. Don't be part of the problem. Be part of the solution. We need, as humans, to start taking care of ourselves and not depending on the megacorps to provide unhealthy, nasty food. Included in this package is also a DVD with 900 survival and off-grid living documents and the offline home canning how to do everything website all on the DVD. So when you're growing all that food, you know how to can it, store it, preserve it, etc. with all these documents. So thank you for tuning in to Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com. I hope that you will pick up this package and start learning to be free. Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, where information never sleeps and freedom is one seed that needs to be planted.
What we do in life, it goes in eternity.
Hello.
It is, yes, I made it back to freedomslips.com. Slips, I say. It does it to me almost too frequently. Skype decides to have its own way with me. And I don't know what to do about it. Sometimes it's so like, okay, bandwidth, you know? And I've learned to take things in stride, pride, and oh, WTF, but it's all okay. We are at Revolution Radio. It is Adventures of a Feral Hippie, and did I lose you? I lost Ed. Why did I lose Ed? Oh, come on. All right, we're going to try again. Oh, I mean, none of this is in my control. None of it. And I have to have joy that I can hopefully get through it and make it so. I'm going to have to go back and start listening to my shows like I used to just see how some of this stuff really comes out as. I mean, and now I can't get him back. Oh, come on, Ed, join me. Oh, because see, sometimes you have to take, and I had to remove him from the old conversation.
Hello. Oh, there you are.
Oh, life is good. Very, very good.
The gremlins are in the system.
No, I tried not to say that, think it, and I told myself no. It's the little angels. It is what it is, whatever, okay? I have a song. You and I'll have to do it.
Okay.
It's called It Is What It Is, Whatever. Like when days are gloomy, weep and weary, it is what it is, whatever. Because if you fall into it, you become it.
Well, for whatever it's worth, you're clear, so it helped.
You know, well, I dropped the chat line. I couldn't keep that up. We have some interesting other weather coming this way because so much has been manipulated that I really believe that each one of our inner crystals can help change these things. And music to me is the only factor that we can get them subliminally enough to be rocking and rolling and moving it and getting the chakra kundalini going, because everybody's just gotten to sleep once that pineal gets frozen from fluoride and stuff. Well,
yeah, it's true. I mean, the pineal gland is... Man, look at every culture around the world and that symbolism and that shape of that gland, whether it's in the staff of the pine cone that the Pope carries or the golden pine cone that's actually in the court at the Vatican. It's in Hindu culture. It's in Sumerian culture. It's
probably written on the rocks somewhere, you know, the rock hieroglyphics, paraglyphics, whatever you want to call them.
Something, but I mean, just that internal turning on of the realization of that conscious thinking person that is not just blindly following the weird energy. It's even when, like, if people say, well, why would you question that? I don't want to know what that is. Well, why? That even when you're talking with politics sometimes with people and they're like, well, I don't know anything about that. That's scary.
Right.
You know, because it's like, well, then you start to realize, well, now I see why things are the way they are. And even with, like, you're talking about that, you know, when a woman or somebody in Indian culture receives a bindi, it's not just a decorative piece of jewelry that they adorn on their forehead. That marking is symbolism of the internal eye, that pineal gland in the center of your brain, which is close to the hypothalamus and the pituitary gland, all responsible for your early development and your sexual development as a human being. It tells you when you're hungry. It tells you when you're full. That gland that sits near all that is doing the same thing on the spiritual level. It is an eye in itself. That's even why it's called the third eye. If you analyze the pineal gland, it is almost identical to an eyeball. It has rods and cones. It's filled with water. It is that thing in my excuse the pun, in my mind, that when I go, I'm having a vision about something that I'm seeing in some way unfolding. And I'm not talking about purple unicorns jumping over a fence into a stream of licorice. I'm talking about the reality of, like, well, wait a minute.
Why not?
1 + 1 is, to me, adding up to 2 when somebody else is telling me it's 11 because somebody told them it's 11. And it doesn't make sense to me. My mind goes, wait a minute, there's something else here. There's something else afoot. I need to look, excuse the pun again, into it in multiple ways, even in a creative way of thinking. That's the other thing. If you're, aside from keeping information from people about the reality of what's going on, if you have a multitude of people that aren't thinking creatively, using their minds in a creative nature, then it's pretty hard for them to question those kinds of things and to circumnavigate what it really is. So it behooves them to keep everybody, stupid and buying crap that they don't need. I mean, as much as Christmas is a big thing on everybody's plate, what are we really celebrating? The season that just passed. I mean, the fiscal year is really at end, and those that really do their history and follow the idea of what the Christ was all about, because it's even written in Roman culture, you'll start to realize that his birth date was actually towards September.
Right, easily right, the 29th. Anyway, but the whole misunderstanding of it is just like All Hallows Eve, there's All Saints Day.
Right.
It's all been a power play, because to me that brings in the blood moons that have been going and still happening. And the other things that people have believed strongly enough to manifest. Okay? Because people don't realize how powerful we really are. And if we dialogue into a certain condition, that condition becomes. We were warned about that.
Well, yeah, and do we not as people in times of crisis sometimes also seek out people that have those abilities? So why would we disclose it as something that couldn't have that potential at this moment in time? I mean, that's to me what the power of intent or prayer or any of those things are connected on that same thing. I mean,
right. Right.
If people are sick or they're looking for some sort of spiritual answer or somebody to guide them in some kind of a way, well, they're usually those kind of people that we look to. And then at the same time, we then take it to heart. We hopefully in some cases and use it beneficially in our lives. But God forbid, we ourselves carry on those kinds of thinking things in our day-to-day lives that can help manifest exactly what you're talking about. I remember mass consciousness thinking about a certain thing. I mean, I still do listen to Coast to Coast, whether it was Art Bell or George Norrie or any of the guests that he has on his show. But for a while, I remember there was these things with the fires in California, and where they were trying to get all the listeners, millions of people, to try to think positively so that they could make it rain. And in some cases, I think that they came up to a 37% ratio as to how that could have been a potential. And 37% is actually pretty high in a study that deals with metaphysics. Or even people that are working on new technology. Where it's
all accountable of time now, because that's what their next fear is that they've been trying to promote, because we are going through a quicker hour by moment by second. It is, I know, more of a compressed time.
Yeah, well, time is speeding up exponentially, right?
With expectations that people are falsely under, they are so stressed that their energies are emitting that stress, which is not allowing. All people need to do is take a couple minutes for themselves. Screw everything else for those 7 minutes. Start at 7 minutes.
Or give yourself, like you say, that license to do that. Whereas, I'm gonna go shut the breaker off in my house, the main breaker for all the power in the house for a whole day, every week. Do you think people could do that?
I'm not gonna propose to think I know that kind of thing.
No, but hypothetically, we're so dependent on what that is that it's hard for us to do that. It's integrated into every part of our lives, and even new technology, whether it's cell phones or tablets or whatever, that is so omnipresent that it's even separated us from just basic things that now it's like, what do you mean you're not having just a normal conversation at the dinner table with your family? And
right,
you have to make those concessions to say this is not happening. Even as a teacher, there were times from week to week I knew a kid wasn't practicing enough or working on stuff, so I would talk to the parents and say, look, there's no computers, no cell phones, no video games this week. And invariably, that kid would make some sort of accelerated growth, because the only technology that he or she had was a guitar, a bass, a drum set, a keyboard, their voice.
His brain, right.
Their brain. and then you see that change in them. It's not just like they got better this week, but their demeanor about their approach is more relaxed. And that to me is a big indicator that they've slowed the merry-go-round a little bit and are paying attention to more tactical, right in front of you kind of things.
Exactly.
That's healthy.
Right.
Get out in the bush. I mean, even when we were, I was working at the Pine River Institute, which is a place for kids that are, in trouble with the police, whatever it was, addictions, attempted suicides. The first thing that they would do with kids that were admitted into the program is a complete detachment from society. Algonquin Park, one of the biggest provincial parks we have here, would host a special area where these kids go, and there's no phones, no computers, no newspapers, no television, nothing except the wilderness, their imagination, and the detachment from all of that craziness. Even like what I was saying before, when you go camping, you come back and you go, wait a minute, this is too intense all of a sudden, especially after what we just went through. That decompression gets them ready for the next 5-stage program that they go through at the center. But without that, it's very hard to pull somebody out of the machine, throw them in something for 37 or 27 days and expect it to actually fix itself. when quite readily the door opens after that month time frame and they're admitted back into the machine. It's really hard to do it. So you have to point that out. And in some cases, with kids like that, they're there for 17, 18 months, 3 years trying to get through their crap. And it's really hard. It's like the system is like a drug.
Group that can recognize that they need that. And maybe that should be mandatory for everybody.
Yeah.
Change that. We're not going to change it through voting, Ed, okay? I do not believe in the system anymore. I have fought it. I know that they're all just with the money and the BS.
Right, I understand.
And the same with like what you said about the underhanded underside of it all. And I've always taught how to do the survival after it got shut off. So for me to literally just go out and do it, no, I wouldn't shut off my power.
Right. And other people are thinking of all alternative ways to deal with that. Other people are thinking of alternative ways to deal with that. Anyway, to become see, and even that, it's like you're saying, well, people are being arrested for this, or they can't burn wood, or I know there are so many rules and regulations about what you can and can't do with your house, but at the same time, what is one person supposed to do in a community if they figure, hey, I'm going to save like thousands of dollars this year over the course of the winter if I use this new contraption in my house? But they're saying, well, you can't do it because there's no CFC approvals and you have to do this and this and this. It makes it next to impossible for somebody that says, well, if we live in a free and open society, the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, and we're being ruled and regulated out of everything that we can and can't do,
exactly,
then more of us have to stand up for the people that are trying to do that in support and recognition that there is nothing wrong with it. If somebody wants to grow food on their front lawn, why should the neighbors not come out and stop the police from arresting somebody or finding them or going to their court hearing to prove their point?
Right.
That's what needs to happen, is the solidarity and the support of people. Like you were saying, bringing people together into a common way of thinking. Well, the responsibility behooves us as people to support people we know are doing nothing wrong. And the only thing that we do is we go, well, the rules say that you can't do that. Well, but those rules are wrong. Just because that they're there doesn't mean that because it says rule that it's right.
Well, yeah, I was a part of that kind of condition and issue for about 3 years. I mean, literally a twig, a leaf, a whatever. There was such denial of a community, even though they had a community network at the church. It was all superficial. They did it only in the name of the words. They didn't do it by their actions.
Right. Well, I've heard stories when I used to go to church when I was a kid, and you'd be there on Sunday from 9 in the morning till 10:30 or whatever. You get out, go to school on Monday, and you find out that the guy in the church that was there just beat the hell out of his wife. So to me, how are you using that pious experience in your communal observation of the religion and then go home and beat the hell out of your family? It doesn't make sense. You're not actually living it. So, and people say, well, I go to church every Sunday, so I'm a religious person, but you beat the hell out of your family. I mean, that doesn't make any sense. Or you're sleeping with your secretary, or you're, like all of those things don't make any sense to me. They're hypocritical. Even when you say, well, I don't believe in killing, thou shalt not kill, I follow the Bible, but you pick up a gun and you're ready to go and kill for your government based on what they're telling you, that to me is somebody that's living hypocritically.
Well, it all but still stems from a fear. Because
exactly.
The woman has the fear to take it. The children have no choice because they have a fear of not knowing. I mean, everybody has a course of reason in that occurrence, but yeah, I'd have a conversation with a person or two if I had that thing happen. I've been known many marriages to get conscious set.
Right.
Well,
even the mechanism of war and or blind faith or patriotism, and I know this is a touchy subject, but when I was a kid and Remembrance Day, like here in Canada would roll around in November, there'd be guys from the First World War, the Second World War, all coming to our auditorium when I was a kid. And I remember these guys wearing their jackets and their berets and their medals and crying to us as kids, saying, don't let this happen again. People shouldn't be killing each other. I watched my friend vaporized next to me. I saw people blown apart, all of these things. And then after even speaking to my grandfather, who was in the Austro-Hungarian War, he was also shot. He was in a prisoner of war camp. He escaped, all that. Even then, and I remember as a kid, 5 years old before he died, he'd roll up his leg or his pant leg and show me this place where the bullet went into his leg. And he'd tell me this. He'd say, Edward, war is nothing but a rich man's game for us to be pulled into and play. If people in this world, he would say, wanted to stand up for their countries, then each of the leaders get into a ring and the last one standing wins.
There you go.
And that's the way. And so when I hear that and then look at the propaganda.
Oh, just
on like I'm going to use
take care of them after what they've given.
I know, and it's almost like Goebbels is running the propaganda machine of what even commercials today with kids' video games, and like the assault on these beach fronts, and there's people being burnt by flamethrowers in the background, and people are killed, but you're just getting points, and you'll come back in the next game. All of that stuff is conditioning. It's just conditioning. It's not heyday where you're getting bacon from a pig and playing a guitar to a chicken. You're actually shooting people on a beachhead as a cartoon character, somebody that looks like a Disney character. And to me, that is like, I didn't grow up with that. I grew up with Sesame Street, the crying Indian that was looking at all the garbage everywhere.
I know, yeah, the best commercial ever, yeah.
You know what I mean? And the reality, he wasn't even an Indian. I mean, he was I think Italian descent. If you follow, there's a great documentary out there called "The Real Indian" and Hollywood's interpretation of indigenous people.
Right, that goes back to the savage. What would they call the natives? See, I'm Native American by my grandfather, and
awesome.
What? It has nothing to do with anything but living with Earth.
Well, that's it. And that's why I have such a reverence and appreciation for those people. And I almost, in some cases, am humbled to such an extent when I'm welcomed into their homes, fed by them, billeted by them, talk to them, and go, my God, like, this is like incredible. Like, and that's the thing when my statement before about, the squanching of cultures around the world and bringing them new technology and these freedoms that we all have. Well, to tell you the truth, I look around and I see people, they say they're free. And in a George Carlian kind of comment saying, well, what do you really have that's free in terms of choice? You really have to succumb to so much of what exists around you.
The choice is between having the internal in love or in fear, and we're going to have another one of these real soon, Ed. I appreciate you joining me on this Monday.
Anytime, Mona. You're a pleasure to talk to, and you, like I said, your detector for the BS is unprecedented.
Yeah, there's more to come. Thank you, sweetheart.
Anytime, girl. Talk to you later.
All right.
Those secrets, science, and esoteric knowledge. Join me, Stephen D. Kelly, for 2 hours every Thursday night at 10 o'clock Eastern Time on freedomslips.com, Revolution Radio, Studio A. You can also listen to previous shows by going to youtube.com/Free Revolution Radio.
What do you think it is? I don't know. Whatever it is.
Welcome to Altair, gentlemen.
Join me, Joe Kiernan, and Dr. J every Sunday from 10 p.m. Eastern to midnight for Researchers on a Mission Radio. We will be interviewing guests in ufology, experts on the paranormal, and stories from you, the listener. Every Sunday, 10 p.m. in Studio B. Join us for some amazing conversations and edge-of-your-seat true thrillers.
Right here at Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, Studio B, 10 p.m. Eastern Time, Sunday nights. Revolution Radio, where information never sleeps. Revolution Radio.
You don't see it, do you? How close we are to absolute chaos? The sick ones are sitting on their fat asses, eating and drink themselves into a stupor, polluting the world without a second thought while it goes down the toilet. Nobody wants to do the nasty work. You know, the shit that we all just think about. Most good citizens are just along for the ride and then bitch and moan and complain about everything when it doesn't work out. Not me. Get it done.
Revolution Radio, where we do the nasty work. www.freedomslips.com.
You really think you could hide it from me by encasing it in lead? I'll mold this box into your prison bars. Don't touch this.
That's kryptonite, Superman. Little souvenir for the old hometown.
You were great in your day, Superman. But it just stands to reason. When it came time to cash in your chips,